first of all, Condi said there's a pandemic destroying an entire generation of people on the continent of Africa, and my first inclination was, prove it. Show me. And she did. She brought in experts, and I believed her. And I ran on a campaign of, they call it pro-life. I believe all life is precious, and I believe we're all God's children. And when you're told a pandemic is destroying an entire generation of people, and you're the president of the most powerful nation, I thought it would be morally shameful not to act. What made the strategy different from a lot of foreign aid is it wasn't paternalistic in nature. In other words, we didn't say, okay, we're going to run this program for you. We went to affected countries and said, design a program. And it was comprehensive in nature. And so we got it all set up, and I decided to announce it to Congress, and didn't want to leak it, because I didn't want the debate to, revolve around contraceptives or, abstinence and all this kind of social issues that could have torn the debate apart. And I'll never forget looking at the faces of the members of Congress when I said, $15 billion, and we're going to defeat HIV/AIDS. I was a big admirer of Winston Churchill, and by happenstance, the guy said, you ought to read the essay by Winston Churchill called Painting as a Pastime. And I did. And so 5 years ago, I said, if that old boy can paint, I can paint. And, you got to be pretty confident to run for president, and I guess I'm pretty confident. And so I hired an instructor and started painting, and it's changed my life. So this guy knew I did that, and he said, why don't you paint the portraits of people nobody knows? And I said, good, I'm going to paint warriors who I've gotten to know. I know them. And I know them quite well. I know their stories. I've ridden mountain bikes with them. I played golf with them. And I know what a tremendous asset they are to our nation if given the help to help them transition from military life to civilian life. There's one in there of Desmarais who wrote this letter that it talks about the horrors of war. And rather than try to sugarcoat it, we just published his letter. And then I painted him. And it's dark, really dark painting. A lot of darks under the eyes. And because he was suffering from night sweats, and I'm trying to figure out, what's that mean? And I saw Desmarais when I was selling the book, and I said, I want to show you your painting. I'm a little worried about it. And he said, it's exactly the way I felt. And so I was unhappy with public education in Texas. And the reason why I was unhappy is because they were just shuffling kids through the system without asking whether they were learning or not. It's what I call the soft bigotry of low expectations. If you're a minority kid, you're not supposed to learn. Let's just move you through. You can't learn, move you through. And so I decided to run against Ann. I called Mother and said, Mother, I'm going to run against Ann Richards. She said, you're not going to win. I don't see how you can solve education problems unless you measure. And it's like diagnosing an illness. And right after my presidency, No Child Left Behind became, slur words all throughout the political spectrum. It's like some people say, there's no role for the federal government. And I'd say, really, then maybe we ought to stop funding. And so the minute we stop funding from the federal government, we won't ask for results. But so long as the federal government provides, particularly for disadvantaged students, shouldn't we know whether or not kids are achieving certain objectives, standards, high standards? And teachers' unions oftentimes say it's unfair to the teachers to measure. And my answer is, really, how about the children? We decided to put together a program that would take 60 people, mid-career people from around the country, and bring them to our respective libraries where they'd have a case study of presidential decision-making. In Johnson's case, the Voting Rights Act. In Clinton's case, the welfare reform. My dad's case, the reunification of Germany. In my case, the financial meltdown. And in order to apply for the, there's like 800 or so apply for the program, and we picked 60. And it's not a political thing at all. It's people from all walks of life. But each person, in order to qualify, has to develop a community program that'll affect the community in which they live. So I'm sitting next to a young African-American kid at one of our presidential leadership. It's called Presidential Leadership Scholars. So he goes to Harvard Business School, and he applies. This kid's really, really, unbelievably impressive. But his program was to take 2 other Harvard Business School classmates and create a curriculum for minority-owned businesses in 3 or 4 big cities. And so you do that 60 a year and multiply it over time and encourage people to take leadership roles in their communities, you can have an impact. If you study history, freedom always wins if given a chance. And freedom yields peace. See, I believe freedom is universal. I believe deep in everybody's soul is the desire to be free. So people who are frustrated and angry, sometimes, it's easier to blame somebody else. And oftentimes the easy target throughout our history has been immigrants. And so I'll just remind you, in the late 20s, it was said we had too many Jews and Italians, and therefore the stated policy of the U.S. government was 0 immigrants. And so this isn't the first time we've had these kind of populist spasms. And oh, by the way, about that same time, we had American First foreign policy, which is, let them figure it out themselves, and Smoot-Hawley, which was many economic historians, you're an economic historian, you may correct me, it caused the Great Depression. It was beggar thy neighbor trade policy. And so hopefully people, when they think about, through their anxiety, will really kind of take some lessons of history and think about the impact of what this can mean to the country.